Are you feeling drained by parenting stress and kid worries? Join us with Dr. Mike Ronsisvalle as he shares heartfelt stories and simple ways to ease anxiety while building stronger family bonds. Stay tuned. Welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. I'm Kendra Nielsen, wife, mom, and licensed therapist. Do you ever feel like you're doing everything right, but you're still exhausted and empty? Did you think life, marriage, and parenting would be simpler and more rewarding? Sometimes you just want to crawl back into bed and lose yourself in screen time and chocolate, rather than face that personal or family stress. You are not alone. This podcast helps you break free of the rat race and build a richer, more meaningful life, flourishing incrementally and realistically, improving your mental health and wellness, and living with deeper purpose beyond the mundane, no matter where you are in life's journey. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. Today we have a special guest here with us, Dr. Ronsisvalle. He's a licensed psychologist and CEO of Live Behavioral Health. With over 35,000 hours of face-to-face contact with patients over the last 2 decades, Dr. Ronsisvalle has developed a passion for helping parents and couples create the healthiest relationships they possibly can. His digital platform, Live Well Coaching, helps thousands of people connect to courses and challenges that teach empirically validated coping skills that get people healthy, stay healthy, and live well. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you got into this space and why you're passionate about it.
And from the time I was just a young kid, really a teenager, I was fascinated by families and relationships and dynamics. And so it was just this natural process for me to get trained as a psychologist. And as I've engaged the field for, it's longer than I'd like to admit now, 20 something years, it has become very clear for me that we need to focus as much as we possibly can in my field on things like healthy relationships, just the dynamics of our culture and how that interacts with marriages and families across our country. So that's what drives me. It's what I'm passionate about, and super excited to talk to you about some of the strategies that people can have to get healthy, stay healthy, and live well today.
I'm super excited to hear all about that. So tell me a little bit about what that is, because listeners don't know.
Yeah. So Live Well Coaching was really birthed out of a passion for me as a psychologist. I started clinics in Central Florida 20 years ago, and those grew, and we treat addictions and trauma and depression, and anxiety and stress, and families and couples and adolescents and children and play therapy. We do all this stuff, right? That really helps us enter the lives of clients and helps them get healthy. And we've done a great job of that. I am not saying that to toot my own horn or to be arrogant. The reality is, man, we've been able to help a lot of people. But one thing that's clear to me over the past maybe 7 or 8 years is the amount of people that need help is growing. I mean, we hear all the time the word crisis, and I agree with that. It is a mental health crisis. There's things that are happening now that absolutely were not on the table when I first started in this field years ago. And so it became just obvious there's a disconnect between the amount of need and the amount of therapists that can actually speak into that need. So I've spent several years now curating Live Coaching, a digital platform that has courses and challenges. We do live events every day. We call it the daily drop. So every day we give information 5 days a week, I should say. Mondays, we talk about depression. Tuesdays, we talk about anxiety and stress. Wednesdays, we talk about wellness. Thursdays, we talk about addictions to things like alcohol, drugs, but also pornography and shopping and gambling, just anything that feels compulsive. And Friday, we talk about relationships and parenting and kids and adolescents. My whole goal with Live Well Coaching is to take all the information from our 40 plus clinicians. We have psychiatrists and psychologists and psychiatric nurse practitioners and licensed mental health counselors and licensed marriage and family therapists and all these people just together. We gather the information. We gather the hundreds of hours of our clinical experience that we have. And we've used that experience to produce these courses and challenges that are on demand, these live events that all are geared towards helping people have information. Because if we have information, we actually are armed and equipped to beat back against a mental health crisis. It's when we try to deal with our issues blindly without knowing really what to do or how to do it that we can end up being consumed by what amounts to really significant mental health issues.
That sounds incredible. And I've got to ask, do you have a favorite day?
I teach Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays, we talk about anxiety and stress. Anxiety is now the most important issue of our time. I really believe that. It's from a mental health perspective. There are more people diagnosed with anxiety today that have ever been diagnosed in the history of how long we've been measuring this. So it is a massive problem. And that probably doesn't come as a surprise to anybody who's viewing. And then Thursdays are fun for me because I feel like addiction is universal. Like people think of addiction as, oh, I'm an alcoholic or I'm a drug addict who's been doing heroin. And that's really not addiction. Those things are addiction, but addiction's so much bigger because addiction speaks to the things that are just compulsive that we don't want to do. So it's super fun for me to teach those days. I've got colleagues on staff that work with me. Dr. Trevor Hislop is a guy that is really involved in the process. He's a marriage and family therapist, and he does a great job on Fridays talking about relationships and family. So I'd really encourage folks to dig into Live Well Coaching if you want access to information from therapists that can help you develop the skill set. It's all like research based and cognitive behavioral in nature, which means there's some validity to the information that we're giving. So hope you guys can check that out.
Absolutely. And I'll put that in the show notes as well. But that's an app mostly. Is that right?
It's an app. It's also online. Our website's actually even better than our app. But yeah, you can access it at livewell-coaching.com or just in the App Store. You can search Live Coaching and it'll come up.
Okay, wonderful. We'll definitely put that in there. You talked about how anxiety is one of the most important issues. And you also talked about this mental health crisis, which I don't disagree here. In your own opinion, why do you think that is changing so rapidly?
Oh my gosh, man. That's such a great question. I have some opinions on it. I can tell you that right now. I think that we live in a world where technology has absolutely started to consume our lives. If you think about the way our parents grew up, it's a completely different world. If I think about how I grew up, I talk to my kids about this all the time. I was telling my kid yesterday, just riding down the road, when I was dating your mom, I had to call her on a landline and be like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? Are you free? I couldn't text her. There was no Snapchat, no instant message. He's wait, the corded phone? I'm like, yeah, the corded phone. That's how I interacted with your mom until maybe a couple of years into our relationship. And if you compare that to what we deal with now, and especially for our kids, the tidal wave of information that they have coming at them, it's unlimited information and unlimited access to uncurated information. I think that's one of the biggest problems with the internet and technology right now is no one's curating the information. When I was growing up, there were 3 networks, CBS, NBC, and ABC. And there were some people that were employed by those organizations that made decisions about who should have a platform and who shouldn't. And what that did is it at least provided some stability to the idea of, okay, we can stand behind the information that we're putting out there because we believe and trust the experts that have a proven track record. We understand who they are and they have a word to speak into our culture. It's like a Wi-Fi hookup. and you can be speaking to the world. So the amount of information that we have coming at us combined with the quality of the information that we have coming at us has created a contingency where people are exposed to essentially information that is at best unhealthy. I think many times it's really toxic. I think some of what's out there is just not good at all. That's why I appreciate what you're doing. You're taking time and effort to put information out that's curated. You vet your guest. I know that because I went through the process. So we need more people like you that are serious about presenting information that's accurate. So you have this whole body of knowledge and information that is uncurated. And then you have the vehicle by which that information is dispensed. And the vehicle is mostly social media. I think it's been really horrible and terrible. To be honest with you, it's not healthy for us. And it puts us in a situation where it develops in us expectations. And then those expectations are almost always unmet because you can never live up to someone's curated Instagram feed, right? Like, how is your life supposed to look like your favorite influencer's Instagram feed when you actually have like real pressure and real stress? And it's not that the influencer doesn't have that. They just don't talk about it. They just don't take those pictures. They're presenting this model of the world that's totally unrealistic. And so when we're presented with all the toxic information in formats on social media that are just so available and unrealistic, I think it's created just a crisis of expectation in our culture. So where the expectations that we have are just so unrealistic that it leaves us anxious and depressed.
I couldn't agree more with that. Have you ever read the book Anxious Generation?
I have not, but I've heard of it.
Incredible.
Yes,
And
yes.
oh, big fan. I've tried to have him on the show too, but he's quite popular right now. But yeah, just exactly a lot of the things that you're talking about. And it's so overwhelming, especially as a parent. I have 4 children. Figuring out like how to do this, especially because I can't access any information from my grandparents or parents on how to raise kids in this atmosphere. And it's like, how do you do this? Like our kids don't have social media. We don't allow that until they're like 18 and then they can decide what they want to do. But even with all of that, there's so many challenges because still every kid on the bus, it's constantly this thing that we're exposed to, our kids are exposed to. And not only them, but I was just talking to my husband last night about this. I was like, okay, goals for February. There's one thing that I'm going to focus on, like pointing out the good for everybody. And if you're asking my opinion, maybe it'd be great if you could scale back on those screens a bit because we're modeling that for our kids. And it's hard for all of us, right? Like how we manage all of this tech. The quality that you mentioned is not the greatest. A lot of it's unhealthy. There's so much stuff out there that impacts us. And I love that you're speaking to that. And you said that specifically affects anxiety. Do you see any other ways that impacts our life?
Yeah, I think I go back to the idea that when our experience meets our expectation, we're fine. So think about your life. So if you have an expectation that, okay, I'm going to get there at 9:00, my husband's going to show up at 9:00, we're going to have a great dinner and we're going to go home. And that's what happens. We're good, right? But it's when our experience does not meet our expectation that we really begin to struggle. And so when you think about what technology has done, it's put us all in a situation where we have the expectation that we're going to be able to do it all, that we're going to be able to work 60, 65 hours a week, get our kids to all the games that they got to get our kids to dance, make sure they're doing their homework. And we're supposed to do this seamlessly without pressure, without stress. And it's supposed to look a lot like it does on the social media posts of all the people that we watched. When we don't get that expectation met, like when life happens and your kids are sick or they're freaking out or they're having a moment or our spouse is a human, that's just the reality, right? Your spouse is an awesome person. Probably it's why you married them, but they're human and they mess up and they make mistakes. When our experience doesn't meet our expectation, that's the moment that the technology becomes just this awful sort of archetype of the world that is impossible to live out. So you have that piece going on. Then you also have just the reality of the dopamine that is released by technology that we all crave. It's really easy dopamine. I struggle with it myself. I have a really hard time. Like our phones, they drain intelligence from us, yet we can't separate from them. Why? Because it is this easy dopamine that we can at any moment just pull up our email. And even though it might be stressful to open a work email, I do it all the time at inopportune moments, just because it gives me a little bit of a feel good, right? That's what dopamine is, the feel good chemical. Every time you just slide through a video on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, that instant gratification of new stimulation, it wires your brain differently. And when you think about the impact of that on us as adults, it's wild because we've become addicted to the dopamine of technology. But when you think about what it does to our kids, it really is disheartening. It's hard to even consider what we're doing to a generation of children. There's never been a generation in human history that have been wired with technology the way our kids have been wired. 98% of kids, teenagers, are on social media every day. 98%. Half of teenagers, this is a scary stat, half of teenagers are on more than 4 hours a day. So when you think about that, we're allowing our kids to partake in this technology, some of them for hours and hours a day. That gives them cheap dopamine, and that does not prepare them to go out and figure out how to interact in a world that, if you leave technology out of it, cheap dopamine doesn't exist. Like dopamine should be hard to come by, right? Dopamine should be, I worked really hard, I feel satisfied, I have some dopamine. Dopamine should be, I went to the gym and I worked my muscles. That was a difficult workout, but I have some dopamine. Dopamine should be, I took the time to get my wife in the car, drive to the beach, and watch a sunset or a sunrise. It's hard, but it's some real dopamine. That's how the world was formed. That's historically how generations and generations of people have gotten dopamine for millennia. And then you have technology. The way we're living is just not normal. I think it's wiring our brains for all the anxiety and depression that we experience.
100%. If you have any stories to share, I'd love to hear, and I'll share one in the meantime. But personally, like, I'd like to apply it to myself. Like, we're all human, including my husband and I are both counselors, and we both have these very real problems. So like I said, like our teenagers, once they get a job, we get them a phone, but we don't have all these things. We just have basically texting and calls. And even with that, we do a check-in, or we at least try to every Sunday. We look at the report together and make goals together with our teens. It's amazing how that time creeps up, even when you're not even using those. And I completely agree with you. I think it's social media and some of these other things that are a big part of that problem. But even without that, it's like how we grew up with interacting face-to-face with friends. That's gone. I find that our teens more often are choosing to stay at home and just text their friends instead of interacting face-to-face. There's all these problems that are coming up. I would say that on some level I had anxiety growing up, but I don't think it's anything near what our teens are exposed to now and what they're facing because of this. Any thoughts or stories on that?
No, I think you're 1000% right. They're digital natives. They're way more comfortable online. They're way better at understanding nuances and even how to post or how to shoot video. All that's great. But as far as interacting face to face, that's a skill set that is dwindling among teenagers in particular. So what you guys have done is so powerful, because what you said is, look, we're going to limit the amount of time that we spend in what I call like a once removed relationship, because you can FaceTime someone. What we're doing right now, honestly, is relational and it's real, but it's different than it would be if you and I were sitting in a room together. There's a social distance to it. So we need to put reps under center is what I call it for our kids, where they're interacting with people one on one. That needs to be standard protocol. That's where athletic teams become super important. That's where dance teams become really important. That's where clubs after school become really important because we have to put them in a position where they're challenged to know how to do small talk, how to care about someone, how to ask good questions. I think what you guys are doing is really commendable. I've got a hot take for you here regarding our strategy. So we've really tried to figure out how do we allow our kids to be what we say in the world, but not of it. You ever heard
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
metaphor? It's like we want to be rooted in this world. We want to be salt and light to this world, but we don't want to be consumed by it. So what we've done over time is say, okay, the reality is social media is going to be a part of everyone's life going forward. You just cannot fight the reality that this is where the world is trending. But our job as parents, I think, is to say, okay, how can we take moments, expose our kids to social media, and then use it as a platform to help them grow as individuals? So one of the things that we've done is obviously tried to say, look, number one, you're going to be with people. And that's our kids are getting older now. My youngest kid is now graduating high school. So hard. That's a whole nother podcast that we could talk about. But as they were growing, we would say, okay, have your TikTok, have your Instagram, whatever, but we're going to look at it with you. And I would do it consistently. Hey, let's open up TikTok together. Let's see what you've been trending. Let's see what's going on there. And you talk about awesome conversations because you can hear the craziest things in the world on some of these social media platforms, especially from teenagers, like these teenagers that are posting that have no frontal lobes and they say and do things that are just absolutely ridiculous. But what great food for thought and grist for the mill with my kids, at least, to say, hey, how do you feel about what this dude just said about fill in the blank? Even if it's some radical, wild idea that we believe is just ridiculous, I want you to articulate why you feel like kid's super smart or the kid's got major issues. And just those conversations, I think, help them begin to understand, okay, here's my value system and here's how I develop a value system in the context of this world that's still connected to things that are ultimately eternal in nature. Like for us and our family, that was it. It's like what matters at the end of the day? What things are going to persist beyond 11th grade or ninth grade or the dance that happens next week? Because those are the things that need to drive us. And so we tried to talk about those things. We tried to talk about what is faith and how does that impact your life in a tangible way? Because for us, we would want to say there's a big difference between living your life in the shadow of the reality that there's a God that's bigger than us, that's called us out to some things, versus being a legalist and just saying, here's all the things I don't do. Because as parents, if we define ourselves and our family in terms of what we don't do, we've actually literally created a bunch of legalists and we've facilitated the process versus allowing ourselves to say, wait, here's what we stand for. We stand for love. We stand for peace. We stand for the things that are going to matter in 50 years. Yeah, I think you're on the right track. That's for sure. I'm impressed with what you guys are doing with your kids. That's hard. It's hard to draw the boundaries like that. They push it
Oh,
back on you a little bit, or how's that work?
oh heavens. We're talking about teens and boundaries. Yes. Yeah, I guess even with each other, some of those boundaries. But same thing. I love hearing how parents do that. Like how
Yeah.
you are saying, okay, yes, let's do some social media, but it's going to be monitored, or it's going to be a discussion, not so much like a helicopter parent, but more a very involved and present parent versus that passive parent. Love that. I often wish it were easier. Like when I'm setting up all of those things on their phones, like it is not simple. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, really don't think this is healthy. This is wise. Like doing all of these things and scaling back as they get older, some of those things. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you showing us what that looks like in your life and what we could do. but also turning it back to faith and values and what you stand for. Love that. It's like being more informed, more conversational with your kids about what matters more, what matters most to them, what kind of person do they want to be. Because I have a feeling if I were to be like, okay, kids, right now, free reign, let's just go check it out. I guarantee you my boys would be watching the most ridiculous prank videos, like stuff that is funny, but it's like, okay, how much are we filling our mind with all of these things that maybe don't?
Correct. Is this productive or not?
Yeah, beautifully said. Thanks for tuning in to this uplifting chat with Dr. Mike. Your path to calmer, more present parenting starts here. Check out Fulfillment Therapy's blog at fulfillmenttherapy.org or email us at hello@fulfillmenttherapy.org for a free coaching call that could become your next podcast episode. We'll see you back here shortly for part 2. Hey friends, if you enjoyed this episode, a quick 30-second share can help someone else find support and help this podcast grow. Leaving a review on Apple Podcasts boosts visibility and keeps the show alive. Your simple acts make a big difference. I'll see you back here each week for more life-changing episodes.